created order. As he saw fit, his establishment of mankind as he saw fit. Before there was ever a civil government, the modern iterations thereof, before there was a monarchy, an order of prophets, the first institution was the family with marriage at the center. The fulcrum of the family is marriage. The world works overtime to get us to make everything else a priority. Everything else. And to place family on the back burner. We have lots of people that are diligent and fruitful, attentive, invested, dedicated, and committed to everything else. And then we offer our families, the leftovers of a day well spent. I want to encourage you to reverse that. I want to apologize. I'm having some issues with some allergy situations. I don't feel bad at all. So as you are transitioning to your full-time job, it is a priority that every person who is a professing Christ follower, to not merely be a professing Christ follower, but to actually follow him. Following him means obeying him. Worship is a lifestyle. It's not a particular activity. The pinnacle of worship is obedience, Jesus said, if you love me, do what I say. Simple. Not easy to implement, but simple to comprehend. Let today be the day. If you have not started this yet, let today be the day. To where you fathers who are listening to me, you lead your families in worship, helping them to understand worship is not something we just do when we go to Sunday, go to meeting. But we worship the Lord in our homes. Make disciples starting in our homes. And then we work outward from there. To the word of God we go. 2 Corinthians chapter 10. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5. This is a very familiar passage of scripture. The Apostle Paul is addressing the saints of God at Corinth. And he says this: For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. And we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. I've explained before, some translations render the portions of scripture where it says, for the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh. It says they are not carnal. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty for the pulling down of strongholds. For we are casting down vain imaginations. The phrasing vain imaginations or speculations. It's a translation of the Greek term logismos, where we get our English root word logic from. We are destroying speculations. We are casting down vain imaginations. We are casting down logismos. This is rogue, hostile, adversarial ideologies. Ideas that dare raise themselves up against the knowledge of God. Ideologies, logismos, that raise themselves up against the knowledge of God. This is what we're contending against. and taking every thought captive. But if we're not careful, we can forget the why we do this. Why do we wage the warfare? Why do we contend? Why do we utilize these weapons of our warfare? You continue reading through this chapter, you'll find that the chapter culminates in the Apostle Paul saying, so that the gospel can advance. If we're not intentional and if we're not careful, we can find ourselves falling in love, so to speak, with waging a war, fighting the fight, and forgetting about the why. Forgetting about the why. The why is because souls hang in the balance. The why is because we love God. The why is because we love people so much we don't want them to be taken captive by a lie and by the liar. The Apostle Paul told the church at Colossae, I'm writing so that you wouldn't be deluded. I'm writing so that you wouldn't be taken captive. What begins with delusion metastasizes into full-blown captivity. What was the mechanism of delusion? Plausible human argument. The advancement of ideas that are anti-Christ. But why? But why? What are we living for? Some of us, if we were honest, and I would just want to be as frank as I can be, much of the professing church are auditory professors of Christ following, but live practically as atheists. The lifestyle reveals, I'm not so sure you really believe there's a God. We have far too many people, for example, who are primarily, if not exclusively concerned, hey, we got to stop this Marxist onslaught because we're going to lose our freedoms. Have we forgotten where those freedoms came from? Have we forgotten that there was a theological, Christ-oriented disposition that led to this experiment in self-government? Have we forgotten that the exercise in self-government will only be as effective as it is participated in by people who are self-governed? I've repeated this before, as the second president of the United States, John Adams, has said that our constitutional republic with democratic features is only efficacious for a wholly religious and moral people. His reference to religion, you study his writings, he's clearly talking about people who are Christian, who are tethered to a biblical worldview, including those who may struggle with personal sinful proclivities, but who will simultaneously, because of their proximity to a biblical worldview, will refuse to attempt to upend the entirety of our system of government for the purposes of making sin policy. But as John Adams said, it is wholly inadequate for the governance of any other people. It's the truth. We don't need to only be aware that the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, that we have the weapons that God has afforded us are divinely powerful. We have to remember the why. The why wasn't merely to protect our constitutional liberties. The why was so the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, his agenda could advance. What are we living for? Do we really believe that this earth is not our home? Do we really believe that? I know it's something that's said. I know we sing songs about it, but do we really believe that? Because if we believed it, there will be tangible evidence in our lives that reflect that belief. I am not standing in line saying, yes, I volunteer, kind of like I don't know the name of the movie, Hunger Games. I volunteer as tribute. No, I volunteer to surrender my freedoms. No, I'm not saying that at all. But for far too long and for far too many of us, we've been manipulated by our freedoms to where we have become the victims that Deuteronomy 8 prophesied. I understand that you know how to, cry out to the Lord when things are challenging and when you're wandering in the wilderness. But you know when you really need to be careful? When you're not wandering anymore. When your bellies are full. When you have gold and silver, you have herds and flocks. That is when you must be careful. Why? Because you can be vaunted in pride and say, look at my hands. My hands have produced all that I see, all that I have. And then what occurs? It is an inevitable cycle. The book of Judges reveals what happened to the nation of Israel and its division into separate kingdoms. World history has revealed what's happened to once great civilizations of the past, many of them not suffering conquest from without, but implosion from within. And by and large, our nation is on the exact same trajectory. Of course, there are some details that are different, but if you look at the core of what is, you'll see a common phenomenon. To what begins with the Lord sending his deliverer, who becomes a lawgiver, holding tablets where the finger of God has written upon them, where he warns against getting a king. But if you're going to have one, at least he has to have the book of the law that he hand copies his own copy and he keeps in his own possession. That devolves to, you get a Josiah who ever heard of this book of the law. What? Wait, there's a book of the law? The same phenomenon is happening here. It is insufficient for us to be zealous about casting down vain imaginations and every lofty high thing. Yet we have no connection to the why God has equipped us to engage in such participation. We must make sure at every stage we invite the Spirit of God to conduct a heart examination and to make sure that our engagement is anchored by the King of Glory himself, and that we have not been detracted in some ancillary pursuit, following a tributary, but no longer abiding in the vine. We must connect the what to the why at all times.
On any given day, God wants each and every one of us to learn to shift our faith into gear, because God has all kinds of things he wants us to do for him and in service to him.
Pastor Joseph Parker.
How important it is that we shift our faith into gear continually. How do we shift our faith into gear? Well, one of the ways we do it is through our prayer life. When you take time to pray, fully expecting God to hear and answer your prayer, that's one of the ways we shift our faith into gear. Speaking the word of God, speaking the promises of God, and reminding God, God, I'm standing on your word, I'm trusting your word. Our job is to believe that God will do his job. Find promises in God's word and stand on them. Live with an expectation that God is going to keep his word. Rehearse the promises of God and stand on them.
Joseph is host of the Hour of Intercession, heard weekday mornings at 3 Central Time. Find the podcast at afr.net.
Danny, the baby just rolled over for the first time. Oh, what a strong little boy.
That a boy, son. You're on your way.
Oh, who's
Aw,
my strong little
look at
man?
Rollovers can be milestones in life, some early on and some later. One rollover you might consider is from your individual retirement account to a charitable gift annuity with the AFA Foundation. If you'd like to increase your retirement income and leave an impactful gift to the work of American Family Association, the charitable gift annuity is a worthwhile option. To learn more, contact the AFA Foundation at 800-326-4543, extension 345, or email foundation@afa.net. If you own an IRA, would like to increase your charitable giving, but need retirement income, the IRA to CGA rollover may be for you. Call the AFA Foundation at 800-326-4543, extension 345.
The words you are about to hear are taken from letters sent in by members of the Trinity Debt Management Program.
Dear Trinity, today I'm making my final credit card payment.
Before I came to you, I was in a constant state of anxiety and panic, but now there is hope for my family's financial future.
Working with Trinity made me understand that I'm not alone.
You really do help people.
Your kindness will never be forgotten.
Without Trinity support, I would not have achieved my lifelong goal of becoming debt-free.
We saved a lot on interest and penalties, of course, but the reward was the gift of human kindness.
Trinity has carried me through a very difficult time in my life. You're amazing.
I used to feel so anxious and hopeless. Now I feel grace and peace.
God bless Trinity as you continue to help others become debt-free.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here. We are in that time of year where we are literally taking this show on the road. We will be all over the country, it feels like. Well, actually, not just feels like, it is. This summer and really for the rest of the year, we'll be traveling in different places. June 6th through the 8th, we will be in Richmond, Virginia, at the Home Educators Association of Virginia's annual convention. This will take place at the Greater Richmond Convention Center. You can go to heav.org in order to register. You do have to register. And this is one of those things where before the Lord moved my wife and I into discipling our children from home, which includes their education, we had no idea what all went into homeschooling. And the Lord used a homeschool conference to minister to us, to help us to affirm for us this is what we needed to do. And for some of you, you may not be aware of what all is available to you. So you need to check it out just to make sure you're aware of what's available. And so this is a great convention for you to participate in. The 41st Annual HEAV Convention in Greater Richmond, Virginia. If you're in the area or willing to come to the area, I was told I can invite you. So I will be speaking at multiple sessions at this convention. We'll be broadcasting live from the conference. So I know everybody's going to want to come because they want to meet J Mac. That's what I got a message saying that. Man, I've been waiting to see if I can meet J Mac. If you do, just make sure you don't come too close to this line because I wanted to cut you because it'd be sharp. And I know it's going to be extra crispy for the road. I already know. He ain't got to say that. I already know. Smelling fresh like barbasol. I'm telling you. Is coming. And then thereafter, the next week, we'll be in Denver, Colorado at the Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference at the Denver Marriott Tech Center. You can get information for this conference by going to RockyMountainHomeschoolConference.com. All one word, RockyMountainHomeschoolConference.com. That is June 13th through the 15th in Denver, Colorado. Then in July 18th through the 20th, we'll be in Bartlett, Tennessee, right outside of Memphis, Tennessee, at the Culture Proof Conference. This is not a homeschool conference. This is more like an apologetics / biblical worldview / equipping conference. And one of the features there is that it is a conference for the entire family to be equipped to stand. You simply go to cultureproof.net to register. You do have to register for each of these conferences, but I will tell you, it is worthwhile because some of you may know this, some of you may not know. I don't accept every invitation that I get. I really pray about the invitations that I get and to see, one, if the Lord would have me participate. And then two, I do my diligence in order to see, is this an event that I want to attach myself to? And all of these events are those that I strongly, strongly believe are instruments that God has ordained for this time to equip his people to be salt and light in the time that we're placed in. You can get kind of a one-stop shop for all of these events and where I'll be throughout the year by simply going to afr.net. Click on the speakers tab. Click on the more info tab. You'll see a drop-down box that says speakers. Click on that, and then you'll see all of the events that are coming up. You can get them right there. All right. Foolishness du jour. J. Matt Carey said, extra starch too, Abe? She like, you know you, Jeff. Tell y'all, man, Jeff be cleaning in the Board of Health. Fresher than a new diaper with powder in it. I'm telling you, y'all better watch him now. Y'all better watch him. There it is. Stephen A. even said it. Because y'all knew what it is. All right, to the foolishness du jour. Last week, while I was minding my business in Washington, D.C., the Mr. J. Robinette administration announced its revisions to Title IX. And one of the things that concerned me is that I saw a lot of commentary, a lot of people focusing on, oh, this is an attack on women's sports, which it is, but it is more pernicious than that. And I want to point that out to you now. It is not merely an attack on women's sports. And I understand the significance of using that as a public point of argumentation, but it really is an assault on truth. It's an assault on truth. Whenever there is an assault on truth, it is an attack levied against God, His word, the authority, the applicability of His word, and the advancement of His gospel for the purposes of transitioning people from darkness into the kingdom of His marvelous light. It is a temporal attack launched that has eternal consequence. Title IX, which was an amendment to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, a part of the Education Amendments of 1972, prohibited discrimination on the basis of sex. This binary phenomenon that is reflective of what God announced in the very beginning, that He made mankind in His image. In His image made He both male and female. The tangible expression of God's image in the earth is genuine, authentic maleness and masculinity, femaleness and femininity. Equal bearers of God's image, qualitative equals while being complementarily distinct from one another. That is by divine design. This maleness, having no capacity to ever be femaleness, is not just a feature of humanity. It is a designed component that God intentionally established. Title IX formally had a clear understanding of what sex was. Notice that the verbiage didn't say anything about gender. Because gender was a later manipulative tool that was employed through the American Psychiatric and Psychological Associations to move us to the place where people began to think about mankind in terms of a distinction between biology and how the person feels. We never used the term gender to refer to anything animate prior to the 80s and 90s. Never. And it was not the feature of learning, research, and the study. And it was a propaganda and politics campaign at these mental health associations anchored by money. All right? Lots of people focused on women's sports and college sports and other things, but I want to show you that the verbiage of the actual revision to Title IX applies, and I want you to hear me well. It applies to every kindergarten through 12th grade school or college or university, any entity that receives federal funds. So it applies to the babysitter, if it's a nursery that gets federal funds, to the elementary school, to the middle school, the high school, the university, the college, you name it. And it's not limited to sports. It applies to private spaces, locker rooms, dorm rooms, for example. You know, some universities have sex-segregated dorm rooms. Guess what Title IX just did to that? Private Christian schools will have to try to assert some type of exemption to it because of their Christian doctrine, but we'll see how that works out. It is a direct assault on whether or not maleness and femaleness is true to the cellular level or not. So this idea, well, can boys go into girls' restrooms? A lot of us think about it in terms of high schools and things of that nature. Do you realize that this Title IX rules means that if you have your child in a public elementary school, you can't keep a boy out of the girls' bathroom? Do you realize that? Do we realize that? Grandparents that you're listening to me right now, if you have grandchildren, you have a 7-year-old granddaughter who is enrolled in the elementary school, you realize this revision means that your granddaughter could be forced to share a restroom with a boy? Guys, this is an all-out assault on truth, because truth ultimately is a person. I've had people say to me numerous times, "Oh, Abe, you just need to be concerned about the gospel. This is not a gospel issue." And I was like, all right, you have a right to be wrong. I'll tell you very simply why it's a gospel issue. He made them both male and female. Where does that come from? Genesis chapter 1. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Where does that come from? Genesis chapter 2. If we welcome the culture, society, or any presidential administration to offer as policy a rebuke and a repudiation of the authority and the applicability of Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2, where do we get the entrance of sin into the world? The reason why some of you listening to me may have knee or hip pain right now, the reason why death entered the world, well, it comes from Genesis chapter 3. If we welcome the culture to rebuke and repudiate the authority and applicability of Genesis 1 or Genesis 2, why would they have any regard for Genesis chapter 3? What happened in Genesis 3? This is where sin entered the world, where the proto-evangelion was employed, where the seed of the woman is prophesying as crushing the head of the serpent. Because the gospel doesn't start in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It starts in Genesis. We don't recognize it, but we are welcoming a societal pulling the rug, if you will, from underneath a firm footing on the gospel. Which, by the way, I would add, because people sometimes like to say, well, Jesus never said anything about identity or sexuality or marriage. It's like, whoever would say that is either woefully ignorant or they are intentionally malevolent. Because in Matthew chapter 19, it is recorded when Jesus was asked about marriage, the incarnate Messiah was asked about marriage, he quotes what he said in Genesis chapters 1 and 2, and to address the issue. Now, why am I saying he? As the Apostle John tells us, he is the Word made flesh. Jesus was there before there was a beginning. He was there at the beginning. This is one of the main reasons why I have a problem with, red letter Bibles. And I know what they're trying to do, and I appreciate the effort, but it's a misguided effort. The red letters, highlighting the thing Jesus said, really undercuts the reality that Genesis to Revelation should be in red letters, because it is all the word of Jesus. When asked about marriage, Jesus quotes from both Genesis 1. Have you not read that he in the beginning made them both male and female? Then he quotes Genesis 2. And for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and the two shall be one flesh. With a portion of the Spirit in the union. So what God has joined together, let not man put asunder. When questioned about marriage, Jesus affirmed what he said in Genesis 1 and 2 as being authoritative and applicable to the issue of marriage. Just as he identifies his word's authority and applicability concerning marriage, so too should we. That's not a one-way street. Some of you listen to me, grandparents, you have sons. You want little girls in their bathrooms? when they're going through puberty and things of that nature. And I want everybody to understand this. This assault on truth is being prosecuted by an all-out assault on humanity. See, it's not merely, so the notion of, for example, toxic masculinity. The whole objective of identifying toxic masculinity is not to confront sinful criminal behavior and proclivities in men. The goal is to emasculate maleness. While at the exact same time, the culture's advance is to masculinize females. What's the goal of both? Emasculate, feminize men, masculinize women. The goal is to undo what God did in the beginning, making them both male and female. The goal is to mar the human manifestation of God's image, so that little boys are confused about being little boys. Remember back in the day, boys, I want to be a police officer, a cowboy, rough rider, I want to shoot. Now, Johnny, did you draw a picture of a gun? You're suspended. Young girls who used to be celebrated for embracing femininity, the only times now, by and large, in culture when women are celebrated is when they're ascribing towards masculine traits. In our neighborhoods, in our communities, if a little girl says, what do you aspire to be, little Susie? I want to be a wife and mom. Most people in our society will stop and say, that's all you want to be? As if being a wife and a mother is a downgrade of some sort. Guys, it's a perversion with an agenda. It's not just generalized perversion. The agenda is not merely the sexualization of society. That is something they want, no doubt about it. But the ultimate objective is to place a finger in the eye of God, as if it were possible, and to cause masses of people to be overwhelmed in deception and confusion and delusion. To where males only really are celebrated, the more feminine they display. Look at our society. Oh, you're a homosexual? You're so brave. You're so bold. Really? That's everything that the culture is saying you should be. Why do you think transgenderism is so popular with young people? Because the culture is celebrating that. But for a husband to dedicate himself to his family, his wife, his children, that's so passé. For a mother to dedicate herself to her husband and her family, this is not Gone with the Wind. That is what our society says.
AFR programming is now available on Alexa.
You're joking, right?
Nope, not joking.
Seriously?
Yep, this is not a drill.
Wait a minute. No way.
There's a way. The Alexa way. So if you just happen to miss your favorite shows, no worries. You can now listen to each podcast with Alexa. It's simple and it's free. Just visit afr.net/apps and click Alexa. We're not joking.
Do you want to prepare for God's calling on your life to ministry? Many people have a sense that God is calling them to ministry, but they don't know the next step to take. Here's a step that may be for you. Wesley Biblical Seminary offers a new Bachelor of Arts in Christian Ministry that's entirely online, and it will prepare you for whatever ministry God calls you to next. We want to equip you with knowledge and tools you need to confidently fulfill the calling that God has put on your life. Learn more at wbs.edu. That's wbs.edu.
Victory upon victory. This is David Wheaton, host of The Christian Worldview. It's natural for Christians to look at the God rebellion in the world and conclude we are losing. Did God lose in sending his Son to earth to be crucified by unbelievers? Jesus defeating sin and death on the cross was his greatest victory. Today, God is using those who oppose him to bring about his plan for the return and reign of Christ. Revelation says, "For God has put it in their hearts to execute his purpose by having a common purpose and by giving their kingdom to the beast until the words of God will be fulfilled." Hear more about this in our most recent program at thechristianworldview.org, and then join us this weekend as we discuss a proper view and care for the body.
Listen to The Christian Worldview with David Wheaton, Saturday mornings at 8 Central on American Family Radio.
You get the soil ready. You put the seeds in and then you water it.
How do you plant a garden?
I don't know. You pray that God will give you a good harvest. And you have to work it to get all the weeds away. And then God brings the plants.
Planting a garden takes planning, hard work, and God's blessing. So does creating a lasting legacy for the people and charities that mean the most to you. The AFA Foundation is here to help you sow the financial seeds God has blessed you with in order for them to blossom for generations to come. We do this by offering free consultation and assistance in the areas of charitable gift annuities, estate planning, will and trust planning, and bequests. To learn more, call 800-326-4543, extension 345. 800-326-4543, extension 345, or visit afafoundation.net.
Of 1.5 million children from the Holocaust, the only two names we heard that day were the names of the same two sisters that I had printed off and put in my purse.
The Joy Lucius book, titled Priceless Pennies, Rose and Odette, Unknown Children of the Holocaust, is the miraculous story of family, faith, and friendship. It's available now at resources.afa.net.
The Hamilton Quarter podcast and 1-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Quarter on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here. So the bottom line is that this Title IX revision is an assault on truth. It's an assault on truth. Now, why do we contend for truth? Yes, for truth's sake, but beyond that. Because souls hang in the balance. Our society, the advocates for the sexual deviancy, social political agenda, the spirit of the age, doesn't want us to have a conversation about the prevalence of people who've had their development intruded upon by abuse of various sorts that has led to them having crises concerning their identity. The world don't want us having that conversation. A part of the reason why they want to, Florida's Don't Say Gay bill that didn't even say anything about saying gay. It said nobody should be talking about sexualization to kindergartners to third graders. But that type of advancement is to try to persuade young minds before they have the capacity to develop and navigate these issues on their own, that this is the thoughts you need to have. And this is what you need to think about, and this is what you need to think about it. In addition to the unspoken reality, and, people get mad when I say it, but I don't care, that homosexual men like to prey on boys. I'm not going to get graphic, but there's a true biological phenomenon that's involved with the abnormal usage of the human body. That's called abuse. Abuse is abnormal usage. And we should, all throughout our society, especially the women in our society, should be able to stand and unilaterally condemn what was promulgated for the purposes of protecting women is now being utilized to not only make women more vulnerable, but really to assault truth in our society. Because my children, your grandchildren, my future grandchildren, that if you were to get on the elevator and say, "Good morning, ma'am," to where we are inviting a society for the response to be, "Well, who says that I was a woman? Why are you so arrogant to assume you know what I am?" Guys, this is not coming. We are here. There's so much more I could say about this. And there's so many things I could address, but I have this particular piece of information that I know not many people are paying attention to, but I want you to be aware this is happening. This is happening. Communist China is increasing its footprint in the Caribbean. If you are paying attention, I'll give you the information on the latest iteration, and I'll endeavor to connect some dots for you. Just a couple hundred miles off the U.S. coast, not the U.S. coast, I'm sorry, a few 100 miles away from the U.S. Virgin Islands, the Chinese government is constructing a Chinese-run special economic zone in Antigua. In Antigua. The nation of Antigua, which is comprised of 2 islands in the Caribbean. And a lot of you, some of you may know this, but many people don't know how prevalent it is. The Antiguan Prime Minister, Gaston Brown, is a huge fan of the communist dictator Xi Jinping. And almost all of its financial contracts that are international are nearly exclusively with China. China has erected an embassy in the Caribbean island nation of Antigua that the locals find to be so intimidating, with full armament and regalia, that the locals are going to take pictures of it like it's a tourist attraction. The 5 acres that the Communist Chinese purchased to build their embassy in Antigua, they purchased for a grand total of 40 cents U.S. It was given to them. Now, the installation and the operations from this embassy, many are beginning to recognize that it's another station that China is conducting espionage from. So when you connect the dots, you have this in Antigua, then you have the Chinese spy station built in Cuba. That's on the east side of the U.S. Then on the other side, you have the Taiwanese phenomenon transpiring, things happening in the Pacific. What I'm saying is that China is, as a boa constrictor, slowly and nearly imperceptibly wrapping its tentacles around our nation. So I just wanted you to know that was happening. And a lot of people are talking about what's happening. Trinidad and Tobago, Bible's talking about what's going on in Belize. And what is coming to the fore is that they're intentionally and strategically ingraining themselves in these places. I'll move on. Just wanted you to be aware. Just wanted you to be aware. All right. A lot of people have seen in the news what's happening in the East Coast, and particularly at Ivy League universities. That's absolutely right. This is combined with what's happening in Africa. You have nations in Africa that formerly were friendly to the U.S., and they are intentionally jettisoning interactions with the U.S., basically because China is lobbying them to do so. All right. In our country, at Ivy League universities, you have these anti-Israel not just, it could be said pro-Hamas. They're calling them protests, but I think they're something else. I'll start with this one first. Police clad in riot gear swarmed Yale University's campus in Connecticut early this morning, arresting 47 people, ultimately, and handcuffed and busted them away because they refused to dissipate after being instructed to by the police and administration of the university. At Columbia University in New York, some of you heard a lot about this. This phenomenon started last week because their president, Nemat Shafik, had the audacity on April 17th to testify in Congress about anti-Semitism on college campuses. Well, students at Columbia University in New York City made the decision to stand in solidarity with so-called Palestine by having Gaza solidarity encampments all over the campus. Listen to it. Watch this. Clip number 1. Go.
To make it feel more like home in a time of chaos, students in Rabbi Drizzen at the university's Chabad are bringing matzah to campus to pass out. all while tuning out the sounds around them. For now a sixth day, students at Columbia have been holding a pro-Palestinian encampment on the quad. This after they were dismantled and more than 100 people were arrested last week. Rabbi Drizin says they're now hiring private security to help students get around for Passover Seders.
In no reality is it okay that a Jewish kid shouldn't be okay to walk out of their dorm room to the Chabad house.
This says the university is allowing the option of remote learning.
Now, that video was done before today because things are so bad now on Columbia's campus. The university canceled all in-person classes. So they've gone 100% remote because of this. Now, I mentioned that the university's president testified before Congress about the ascendancy of anti-Semitism on college campuses. The students at President Shafik's own university decided, we're going to show you just how anti-Semitic we're going to be. People that are identifying themselves as protesters are on the ground saying, we are Hamas. A word? So you're Hamas? You do know what's going on, right? So even though the New York Police Department attempted to remove these encampments from the campus, these students are refusing to leave. Over 100 people have been arrested to date. The campus has gone into no in-person classes. Jewish students are being warned, you need to leave. You need to go home. It's not safe for you here on campus. I again will say to you, this is not Germany. This is Nazi Germany. This is not in the Middle East anywhere. This is in New York City and Connecticut and Boston. All of these Ivy League schools are having these same phenomena. So, and again, it's not lost on me. Not long ago, ADF's president and CEO, Kristen Wagner, attempted to give a speech at Yale University, but she was shouted down. At Stanford, Fifth Circuit Court judge. And is anybody noticing a pattern here? We used to have this thing shouting in the face of a Jewish person after the most egregious terrorist attack in Israel's history in the last 40 years on October 7th. And now you got college children talking about we are Hamas? Oh, word? So you cool with beheading babies and I'm presenting this to you, yes, so you can know what's going on in the country, but also to help you to see the depth of depravity. Depravity is not just in the hood on the block. Got depravity in these Ivy Towers, Ivy League schools. Depravity in Congress. Don't even get me started on Congress. I love and respect Speaker Mike Johnson dearly. I have no idea what happened with these current occasions in Congress. I don't understand what's so difficult. The $95 billion foreign aid bill that includes $60 billion for Ukraine. That $60 billion for Ukraine includes, this gobsmacked me, includes $300 million for the Ukrainian border. What's so hard about saying, for every dollar in this measure we want to give for the border of Ukraine, why not we do it for our own border? Let's go even further. Just to make sure you understand President Trump would have to support this measure. How about we put in, for every dollar for the Ukrainian border, we put $2 for your wall? What about that? I just, now I'm not going to pile on, but I'll tell you because I know him personally. I know him to be a man of courage and integrity. But the swamp is swampy, man. I don't know what has happened. I'm going to continue to pray for him. But if you don't know yet, if you haven't recognized it yet, we need to understand our confidence needs to be placed squarely in the Lord. Period. I get the questions. I mean, people have been sending me all kind of messages. Abe, you told us he was good. And I did. I haven't talked to him. I don't know what's happened. I would love to. I don't know what's happened. But it is greatly concerning. It is greatly concerning. And we have all of these different iterations of our society revealing what happens. And I know there's a reality of having this divided Congress. You know, the Republican majority in the House of Representatives is very, very slim. With all of the Republican congressmen resigning during their term. You notice how you never see Democrat congressmen resign during their terms? You ever notice that? But just Republicans. It's almost like they're trying to give greater emphasis and greater persuasive power to the Democrats. It's interesting how that happens. But it reveals once again that our confidence needs to be placed squarely in the Lord. I will continue to pray for our speaker. I know him to be a man of integrity and a man of courage and a man of conviction. Personally. So I'm going to continue to pray for him, as I'm doing for all of our leaders. Some of them I'm praying that they get saved. Let me say that some. Most of them I'm praying that they get saved. And I'm praying for those who are saved, that we have the courage of our convictions to stand up and do what is right, come what may. Come what may. Well, thank you to each and every one of you who have tuned into the program. Lord willing, we will be back tomorrow, hopefully without a congested nasal passage. And we'll delve into the words holy, the word of God and his holy passages as we navigate the issues of our day. As you're making your way to your full-time jobs, make it your business, as I am endeavoring to make it my business, to exalt the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, first and foremost in our homes, that will work outwardly from there. God bless you all.